Thank you and good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to talk to you. And given that this session is about the minerals of tomorrow, I could well have used this opportunity to talk about vanadium, which I find particularly interesting. While it has mostly been used as a steel hardener, we are seeing increasing demand for large-scale energy storage in the form of vanadium redox flow batteries. Vanadium-bearing titaniferous magnetite deposits outcrop all around South Africa in the Bushveld igneous complex, as illustrated by the pink line on the slide. These batteries have the potential to store energy for periods that far exceed what is commonly achieved with the lithium-ion batteries now relied on by the fourth industrial revolution. While I expect this resource to contribute significantly in the future and to be of interest to numerous stakeholders, I'm reminded of my role in the Southern African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy and my resolve to motivate for an increased awareness of ethics and ethical leadership amongst all stakeholders in our industry. I believe that this will be the single most important requirement for leaders to successfully navigate the environment in which we now find ourselves. This environment is as a consequence of increasingly turbulent times, with high levels of political and economic uncertainty, compounded by regular reports of fraud and corruption. Our world is changing at an alarming rate due to the numerous global dynamics simultaneously impacting how we engage, operate, or simply exist. And now COVID-19 is also changing the way we work and interact with one another. I'm now going to briefly introduce SAIMM before talking about why we should increase ethical awareness. SAIMM is now over 125 years old and well established. It was formed in 1894 following the discovery of gold in 1886 in Johannesburg. The organization primarily exists to identify the needs of our members, to ensure that their requirements for knowledge are satisfied, and to represent and promote their interests. We have over 4,000 members across 5 grades of membership, and they are from some 40-odd countries. We work closely with the South African Council for Natural Scientific Professions, the South African Council for Professional and Technical Surveyors, the Engineering Council of South Africa, the Geological Society of South Africa, and many other professional voluntary associations. Broadly speaking, we offer representation on international bodies, professional and independent service, ongoing development, mentoring and knowledge sharing, constructive involvement in the modernization of our industry, international networking opportunities. Our members are involved at all stages of the life cycle of a mine. And we need to remember that the expectations that we create as professionals can differ materially from reality. It's for this reason that governance is needed. And SAIMM works closely with various other organizations to enhance international alignment in this regard. In fact, SAIMM enjoys reciprocity with some 31 professional organizations around the world, including the following, which I'm not going to read out. SAIMM has developed this reach because of a well-established standing and level of respect amongst its peers. We hold our members accountable to a code of ethics, which is essentially a short list of specific principles and value statements to guide our behavior and the decisions we make. They are an important reference point for us to use both at work and in our broader society. It was our intention for the content of the code not to be specific, so that we do not inadvertently limit our application of the ethical and behavioral principles contained therein. But have we asked ourselves if this set of principles and value statements is sufficient to influence the level of ethical awareness that we now require of one another in today's world? I would argue that people are not always transparent, and that sometimes the way forward is not very clear. So we cannot simply adopt a checklist mentality when making ethical decisions. We need to be mindful of the implications of our decisions and actions in society, and perhaps also ask ourselves, Is it enough to simply follow a list of ethical guidelines? Should we not care enough and be courageous enough as individuals to try and influence a better outcome whenever we can? Would we be comfortable with ourselves when we fail to act while knowing that we could and should have? Should we not also be more attuned what is right and wrong from a moral point of view? Do we as individuals stand up and speak up when we see something wrong? We know it happens with regular reports of fraud and corruption in many areas, including the high-profile companies that we regularly encounter. Despite ethics receiving increased global attention following the Enron debacle in 2001, we have since seen a number of other businesses also incurring enormous reputational damage over allegations of corruption or corporate collusion. Repeated reports of these types of transgressions do not only contribute to increasing the incidence of unethical behavior across all levels of our society, but also negatively influence investor confidence due to their perceptions of the prevailing levels of corruption. This chart shows where South Africa ranks out of 180 countries on a global corruption index. The country has slipped down the slope of corruption to the 70th position. We should arguably be up with Botswana or even Chile. Governance failures point to low levels of ethical leadership, and perhaps a code of ethics, although necessary, is simply not enough. While useful as a general rule, as a general guide for how people should act, they don't seem to be sufficient to ensure ethical conduct. There are clearly people who are capable of easily circumventing rules for personal gain, and public complacency around the importance of personal morals or ethical principles does not help in this regard. People are also finding themselves increasingly concerned with what is in store for them. And one consequence of this is that our society has become more polarized and insecure. For this to change, we now all need to actively promote and contribute to increasing awareness of the importance of ethical conduct. This may arguably be the single most important thing we can do to unlock the full potential of the South African economy. It is my contention that if there were higher levels of ethical awareness amongst the general public, we would likely see many more people making the effort to influence those around them to make better choices, to do what is right. People capable of doing so will more often than not be guided by morals and by their personal sense of what is right and what is wrong. These people will be exercising ethical leadership in the moment when it counts. Sustained ethical conduct in our industry will ensure that we can work and live in an environment where we are inspired by one another and respected by others. We can achieve this by actively and continuously promoting ethical awareness, practicing it, and making it real and visible to both internal and external shareholders. As professionals, we should demonstrate ethical leadership whenever and wherever the opportunity arises. But what does this mean? Wikipedia says ethical leadership is leadership that is directed by respect for ethical beliefs and values and for the dignity and rights of others. More simply though, these leaders create spaces where people are more tolerant, understanding, and respectful of each other. They usually seek to increase ethical awareness because this encourages people to self-regulate. They are more able to embrace the levels of diversity that have come with globalization and are concerned with moral development, virtuous behavior, and will usually contribute to developing a more cohesive society. Their decisions and actions are primarily guided by principles of respect, fairness, honesty, integrity, and accountability, with a deep sense of mission to serve other people and not narrow individual interests. Imagine for a minute that you're on a mine and you encounter someone verbally abusing a helper. Your moral compass may remind you that this is not right, but whether or not you act will depend on your character. The ethical leader would step in, seek help, or call a manager. We need to also understand that our growing digital environment requires that we all develop the digital mindset and capability necessary for our industry to remain relevant well into the future. But this type of mindset will require ethical leadership if we are to successfully succeed in cultivating the type of agile team environment where the power of people working constructively together and challenging the status quo will be there to deliver the required results. So in closing, SAIMM cannot raise the levels of ethical awareness on its own. We need the collective effort and support of everyone in our industry to lead by example whenever possible, to influence both their peers and our broader society to make the right choices. Well done to the organizing committee, and I trust that the conference has been of interest and benefit to you all. Thank you.